Have you ever spent so much time working on a painting, doing all the details, putting in all the bells and whistles, only to realize you hate it? Yeah, let's talk about that. Welcome back, you guys. Sorry there wasn't an upload last week. Your girl was super ill, and there's at least 3 separate people who can attest to the fact that I genuinely sounded like Batman for a whole entire week. But we're back, we're better, so let's get painting. Also, happy Pride! I hope that wherever you are, whoever you are loved and appreciated and supported for all of the wonderful things that make you, you. I hope you are so happy, you are so important, and I for one absolutely love you. Alright, so if you guys have been watching my channel for a couple of months, you probably remember this painting. It was going so well, and then I completely fell out of love with it. I don't know, it was so good, but looking back at it, it's just not giving what I want it to give. And I'm sure this has probably happened to you before as well, where a project that you were so excited for just seems to lose steam and you just simply don't want to work on it anymore, and it just starts to feel like a chore. Now, I've spent many a video telling you how you can fix a bad painting, but today I want to go the opposite route and talk to you about scrapping a painting. More specifically, some signs to watch out for that might tell you it's time to send a painting to the painting graveyard. Obviously, all of this is my opinion. You can go ahead and fix your painting anytime you want to, and you can go ahead and scrap any painting anytime you want to. This is all just my opinion. So if you're ready to go at an old, annoying painting with a chainsaw, make sure you give this video a big thumbs up. Comment below how many paintings you've scrapped this year, and also come say hello on Instagram, Discord, and now also Kara. Links to all of those are in the description. Alrighty, here's how to know when it's time to take an axe to a painting. This was the painting I started working on back in April, and it was actually the piece we looked at in the video I did about the Zorn palette. Don't get me wrong, the palette served its purpose and his skin looks really good, but I really don't feel like the piece as a whole was doing what I wanted it to do. So today we're going to scrap this and start over, and I want to tell you all the aspects of the painting process that told me without a doubt that the old painting was beyond saving and that it was time to go back to square one with a blank canvas. So let's dive in. So the very first thing that struck me while looking back at the old piece was just how often the composition had to be changed. Now, don't get me wrong, your composition is going to evolve and improve over time. That is a natural progression for every painting. But this was different because I wasn't necessarily improving upon the existing comp. It started with a story, then I changed the composition because it wasn't focused on the character enough. Then I changed the background because we lost the story. Then I changed the background again because it was taking away from the character again. Then I got rid of the background and painted the urn black, hoping that eventually I'd be able to figure out a way to make it make sense. And that is where the issue lies, is that I spent hours and hours trying to strong arm the painting into making sense. Now, obviously painting isn't easy, it is deep soul work and is absolutely the hardest job that I've ever had. However, oh god, it really should not be this bad. With every successful painting, I noticed that every time the composition changed, it was to further enhance the already existing story. However, looking back at every failed painting, I can tell you that any change in composition in those paintings was actually in order to try and create a story. So a good, healthy progression in the composition feels like baking. You start with a recipe and all the ingredients, but then you kind of add in your own little flavors to boost what's already there, and maybe change up how you frost the cupcakes or use different food coloring to make it fit a theme. It's got a solid starting point, but you enhance it in little ways to make it better than how you first imagined it would turn out.
But bad composition progression feels like a struggle meal. It's like when you can't do groceries and all you have in the fridge is some lettuce and like 6 bottles of ketchup. Imagine trying to put those together into a meal. You guys, it's been 7 years since I graduated uni and I still have nightmares about this exact scenario. But that is how it feels to force changes into a composition to try and get it to tell a story. If your composition is starting to feel like a struggle meal, it is definitely time to throw it out and start over. This one's a little more intuitive and requires us to tap into our feelings a little bit. I know, yuck, but we gotta do it. My second surest sign that it is time to start over is that the story feels dead. As a painter, your job isn't just to put random paint on canvas. No, what you're really doing is using the paint as a medium to tell a fun, interesting, thought-provoking story. With the original Aquarius painting, I tried to keep it very traditional, very true to the original imagery. Aquarius is picturized as the water bearer, pouring the waters of cosmic knowledge into the earthly realm. And so I tried to stick to the original imagery and gave him a giant urn and tried to show the water pouring out and all that jazz. But quite frankly, that scene just did not feel true to my own style of storytelling. It felt too restrictive, and so I tried to add more and more elements to see if I could expand on it, and I now realize that this is why the composition changed so much. The story was dead. In fact, a great measure of whether your story is alive or dead is to think about explaining your painting to someone else. How would it feel if you were to go up to a friend or someone whose opinion you value and try to explain to them what you're working on? If it feels lame or boring or just cringe, I promise you your story is dead. It isn't inspiring any excitement or even just joy in you or your audience, and it is time to put it out of its misery. So when I started over this time around, I thought more about what story I wanted to tell. What was my understanding of Aquarian energy? To me, Aquarius feels less like an urn holder and more like a portal between worlds. It feels like a holographic beam of light that brings intense chaos into the world so that it may trigger massive change in the most fundamental aspect of human existence. Aquarius is a grown-up wild child, the alt adult who refuses to be constricted by the social norms that keep the rest of us in neat, restrictive boxes. Now that story feels so much more alive and vibrant, and it is a much better starting point for a painting. Does this mean that the painting will 100% end up being a masterpiece? Of course not, but a good, exciting story is definitely going to give us the best possible chance for a beautiful end product. Another telltale sign that your painting is ready to go to the painting graveyard is that you find yourself trying to cover up a dead story with technical prowess. Now, I do this all the time, and I've also seen a lot of other artists do this, so it is definitely likely something you've done before. Sometimes we can almost assume that it doesn't matter how dull the story in a painting is, as long as there is good rendering and a whole bunch of textures in there. However, like I just said, our job as artists isn't just to make something look nice or believable. It is to use that nice, believable render in order to tell a good story. And a good story doesn't mean it needs to be super complex, but there does need to be atmosphere and just life in the piece. And sadly, no amount of good painting skill will ever replace that. Funnily enough, I find that this is the reason why AI art is so uncanny and easy to identify and just feels lifeless, because it scrapes all the technical prowess from art created by human artists and replicates that, but it can never really do stories well enough, because that is a fundamentally human characteristic. So when we, as humans, take a lackluster scene with poor storytelling and try to make up for it with more and more rendering passes, we're essentially leaving out the soul of the painting. This is what I found myself doing with the older version of the Aquarius piece. I kept going over the skin multiple times, hoping that if I just render the colors well enough and try to paint beautiful lighting, that will make up for the glaring lack of storytelling in the composition. And in doing so, I was chipping away more and more at the soul of the painting, which was arguably the only real unique contribution I would have made to this piece. So if you find that you're rendering furiously, hoping that just painting it well enough and polishing up the details will make up for a weak story, it is definitely time to scrap. I think the most common piece of advice when it comes to fixing a bad painting is to sleep on it and come back. Going away for a break or a nap and coming back with fresh eyes usually allows you to see a new way forward with most paintings. At the very least, the extra rest helps you think better. However, with paintings that are meant to hit the dirt, you'll find that sleeping on it really doesn't help. Hell, I slept on that old painting for 6 weeks, and even then, after doing literally 10 separate paintings since then, I still don't feel refreshed enough to try and go back and salvage that piece. I think 10 paintings later is a pretty good indicator that it's just not going to happen, right? The only real reason that taking a break helps, in my opinion, is that sometimes visual fatigue can interfere with your ability to think in a creative way. A lot of people seem to see creativity as some sort of magical gift that some people are just born with and can whip out at will. But the truth is, every one of us is born with immense creative potential, just like we're born with the potential to someday walk, talk, and eat. You only really get good at any of those things when you practice. Those are skills, just like being able to think of creative solutions. And just like with any skill, working on it for hours at a stretch will lead to fatigue and the inability to perform until you've had a break first. So the solution is to go away, have a break, come back, and resume. And that's wonderful, as long as it is a fatigue issue. Sometimes, though, there are way more fundamental problems with the painting that no amount of creative thinking can fix. So it doesn't matter if you take a break for an hour, a week, or a month. When you come back with the freshest set of eyes, the issues are still going to be there. But this is actually a great litmus test to see if there is even any point pushing a painting any further. If you sleep on it and come back and the painting is still trash, I'm sorry babe, it just has to go. Think about the ideation process for a painting. You know how you start with a half-formed image in your mind when inspiration strikes, and then over time you let it cook until it is mostly fully formed in your mind's eye? And then as you start actually making marks on canvas, you start to see that abstract vision that only existed in your mind now take shape as a physical image. But even then, at that very, very early stage, you still have a fairly developed idea of what the end result will look like. And again, that vision will evolve as the painting starts to do its own thing, of course, but it still exists in your mind's eye, right? Well, I found that with paintings that are going downhill quickly, that mental image just sort of seems to vanish. And I think part of this goes back to the first point that we looked at about forcefully changing the composition way too much. Maybe it's just that your mind's eye can't catch up. Even though it does seem to adapt to good progression really well, just not so much to bad progression. Or perhaps the reason we feel the need to change the comp so much is because that lack of a mental image kind of makes you feel lost with no direction to work towards. In either case though, the mental image of the end product simply disappearing from your brain is pretty much a surefire sign that this painting will probably end up a dud. And yep, you guessed it, that is exactly what happened with my first attempt at this piece. I don't think I'd even worked on it a couple of hours before the end goal just simply left my head. And as someone who already struggles big time to even function without an end goal in mind or a to-do list, this kind of thing really does ruin everything. With the current piece, however, the vision is alive and well, so far at least. I mean, it has evolved a couple of times, but I've worked on this a couple of days and we do still have a generally stable end product to look forward to. So hopefully that's a good sign. At the end of the day, your own intuition is always the only voice you should listen to, especially when it comes to something so deeply personal as the art you create. But I sometimes find that intuition is hard to listen to just because it is so quiet as compared to the chaos of all the anxiety that is desperate for a good end product. So I find that knowing some telltale signs to look out for when it's time to scrap a painting can often help me start over quicker rather than wasting more time over something that isn't going to work out anyway. Obviously, this painting is nowhere near done and needs several more days of work, but I actually feel like it's doing a lot better at this early stage than its earlier counterpart was.
So, what are some of your key indicators that tell you it's time to pull the plug on a painting? Or are you someone with infinite patience who will see every single painting through to the end, even if you absolutely hate it? Comment below and let me know. Also, thank you so much again to you guys, and especially to my patrons for being patient while I recovered last week. Patreon rewards are rolling back out starting this week, so if you want to grab all of the speed paints ever, as well as other exclusive rewards such as my brush pack and now prints every few months, you can check it all out on Patreon. I'll leave a link down in the description and up in the cards. Your support really helps me keep creating all this awesome content, so thank you so much for taking a second to check it out up there. Alrighty, you guys, that's about everything for this video, so thank you so much for hanging out with me. I really hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. If you still have hope for your painting, you might enjoy this video down here where I talked about some ways in which you can fix a broken painting. There's some really cool tips in there and you might definitely enjoy it, so check it out here in the outro and I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye!